lecture, candidate number 2012125, and this is for Unit 5C, Assessment 1. So I'm going to talk today about an overview of two professional artists' choreographic processes and how that has impacted on my own choreography. So first of all, a little bit about me. I studied GCSE and A-level dance, and also trained at the Swindon Dance Centre for Advanced Training. I then went on to Trinity London Conservatoire of Musical Dance and studied a BA there, and then continued with an MA with Transitions Dance Company, which is a graduate company there. I then went into freelancing and eventually made my way back to Swindon Dance, and I've ended up working for the Education and Development team here as coordinator. I'm also a dancer for Flicker Dance Company and for Swerve Dance Theatre Company. So, my choreographic experience. I would say my choreographic experience, for me, choreographing is quite limited. I tend to shy away from those experiences, and I prefer to be in other people's processes. I've been in a wide range of pieces, and these have ranged from physically demanding technique work, classical technique, narrative, dance theatre, choreology-based works, and just the plain weird and wacky there, which you might be able to see from the photo on the left. During my training, I did have to choreograph, and most notably was a dance science-based piece around the human body. But as I've moved into teaching, I found that I've been exploring choreography more. In the last year or so, I've created pieces for Mega Movers, which is a creative dance piece around a jungle exploration, and most recently a Dance Parkinson's piece, a group seated to standing piece to the lyrics of a song. So my choreographic roles have been limited, but as we're about to undertake our practical choreography assignment, I would like to explore two professional artists' processes and how I can bring that into my own practice. So first of all, I'm going to start with Richard Alston. He was born in the UK, and after various different training, he was one of the first students at the newly formed London School of Contemporary Dance. While he was there, he undertook many choreography opportunities, and in 1972 he formed the UK's first independent dance company called Strider, along with other practitioners such as Christopher Banner, Wendy Levitt and Siobhan Davis. In 1975 he went over to New York to train at Bertha Cunningham School and returned in 1977. On his return, he started working with Ballet Rambert and then made his way back to London School of Contemporary Dance, so the place, in 1994, and soon after that his own company was born, so Richard Alston Dance Company. He's made many works since that time, and it's just been announced recently that the company will close after their final tour in 2020. So, what is Alston's influences? During an interview with London Dance in 2006, Alston was asked, who or what are your influences? And he replied with, Merce Cunningham, whom I studied with, Sir Frederick Ashton, who I knew at Rambert, Fred Astaire and August Bournonville. The thing they all have in common is a passion for fast steps. So this can be seen in Alston's work Overdrive, which I'm just going to show you a little clip of now. Let's take this up for you. Put it on full screen so you can have a little look. Oh. So it's just a promotional trailer, so it's got real words in between. But throughout this, you can see the twists of the torso, the curves and the tilts, precise steps, intricate rhythms and ballet vocabulary. You can see that it is highly technical as well from his dancers. So it's just a nice little extract, seeing all of those qualities that he uses. You can hear the change in the rhythm there with the music. That's sort of often the phrasing he uses. Lovely. So, moving back. Oh, that window's gone. There we go. So he's also worked with a wide range of people, including Trisha Brown, Twyla Tharp, Steve Paxton and Siobhan Davies, whose career also intertwined with Alston's quite a lot. So his choreographic process, it's changed since he first started choreographing as a student, but it's said that his determination to find alternatives to the narratives, emotional expression and symbolism that characterise the post-frame work around him. That is one of his common features. And when asked what his starting point was, he responded with music, music, music. Now, for Alston's piece Overdrive, which you've just seen an excerpt of there, he had already selected the music before he started his process, and in the summer before he came together with the dancers, had a little bit of improvisation and exploration, and then when they started the process, he taught them an opening phrase. Now, that aspect guiding that was the movement had to be relaxed due to the speed of the music, and the movement had to move and use the whole space. Spatial structures were being created as this happened. It ends up being split into male and female, and he's quoted saying, "There's nothing significant about this, it just happened," which left duets, trios, group pieces. And that was all put together with the music to form the piece Overdrive. You think it's building up to a conventional climax, but it actually finishes on a tune, so it gives a sense of completion to the work. So Alston's music tends to be his starting point, then working very closely with his dancers to create the phrasing movement using exploration and improvisation. Choreographic devices such as repetition, canon, unison, and the phrasing and rhythm of the music to develop the work is all very important as well. Now, notably, one exception of his work is Soda Lake, which was created in 1981. This was a solo created for Michael Clarke, and it was done in complete silence, and it was based around Nigel Hall's sculpture. It's an abstract work, but throughout it you can see the Cunningham and Release influences and the development motifs throughout the work as well. So how has Alston's choreographic process shaped my thinking? I've always been interested in Alston's work, ever since studying it at GCSE and then seeing his performance live. I really like the use of rhythms, the intricate steps and the technique, and how it creates an organic use of the body and letting natural momentum take its course in the movement. When teaching, I tend to use Cunningham and Release-based techniques, and in my choreography I find myself going towards that as well, because it's what I like to use. For my choreographic process to come, I want to explore rhythms and phrasing, as I tend to go with the obvious rather than the unexpected, so I'd like to explore that further. And also I like how Alston's work visually draws in the audience as well through his space and structures. And this is what I tend to forget, it means my pieces can become quite flat. And also the collaboration directly with the dancers is something I forget to use as well. So, moving on to my second artist, I've chosen Hofesh. He was born in Jerusalem in Israel. He was training and then eventually joined Batasheva Dance Company, as well as continuing his conscription with Israeli Defence Force at the time. He eventually moved to Paris following a rock band which is called Human Beings, so he's very musical, and from there he made his way to London in 2002 to join Yasmin Vardaman's dance company as a dancer. In 2003 he created a duet called Fragments, and this was basically earned him the recognition to become associate choreographer at the place. They started to support him and commissioned him to make Uprising in 2006, and after that his career just goes into overdrive. Since then he's commissioned to create works for Scottish Dance Theatre, Royal Ballet and Netherlands Dance Theatre, and he's most notably he's created many works including Political Mother, Sun and Grand Final in 2017. So, what influenced Hofesh? It's said that being a dancer with Batasheva Dance Company and Yasmin Vardaman's company really influenced Hofesh's choreography. Most notably their physical demanding styles, Gaga influences, physical theatre and quirky characterisations. He says himself it has a rich mix of influences, most notably those of Ohad Naharin from Batasheva, Yasmin Vardaman, William Forsythe and Pina Bausch. Stanley Kubrick is Hofesh's favourite film director, and and it's often said his works have a filmic quality about them as well. His style is often described as animalistic, earthy. It stems from the energy and feeling rather than the technique, and this is maybe something that Hofesh drawn on from his earlier training. Music also plays a large part in Hofesh's work, as he creates the sound scores for all of his work. He was very musical and did a music degree as well. And also his upbringing in Israel may have had an influence on his work. They're often of a political nature, and they have some elements of traditional music as well. So I'm just going to show you a short clip from Political Mother, which was in 2010. It's quite loud. Large scale, a huge collaboration going on there. You've got 3 levels, I think, of musicians. The dancers come in, very animalistic, chaotic. So you kind of get a sense of Hofesh's work there for the Political Mother. So we'll move on. Going to leave them to keep. Bring this back up. Lovely. So his process. Hofesh says that his ideas generally come to him when he's on the bus or the tube, and then he writes them down in a book, big notebook, like we're doing with our choreographic sketchbook. For Political Mother, that you've just seen there, his idea of neediness and the relationship between our intimate lives and our countries, and how a connection between something political and cosy can seem quite impossible. So that was his idea. He also liked the way that the words political and mother were really contrasting and how he could bring them together. He had other initial ideas, such as there being a tank on stage, 5 drummers and a politician shouting out at the audience. So it seems that Hofesh's way of working, he has his own way of just bringing it all together. And one for me as a dancer that I struggle with, but as a choreographer, I find it even harder to accept. And I found a nice little quote from him here. So the main ingredient in my choreographic process is trying. I try this, try that, try something else, try that one we did before again. So he keeps trying his choreography, pushing it to the limits, which results in the chaotic work that he often is seen creating. His use of spacing is also a key part of his process. It creates an illustration of spacing and group patterning, and he often uses mathematical approaches to group his dancers and space them on stage. The music, though created by Hofesh, is not always the starting point. He often uses it to drive the action, but also to explore how it can support the movement as well. So, how has Hofesh's choreographic processes challenged my thinking? I've never seen Hofesh's work live, but due to his rise in fame while I was training, I was obviously very aware of his work. It's been a style that I've shied away from. I prefer cunning and release, as mentioned earlier. But after I left training and started to explore different pathways, I found myself drawn to his animalistic qualities, his use of floor work, bodies in space, and it's something that I wanted to explore. I believe his work has challenged me to explore a new style and a way of thinking as well. Rather than having a specific idea, have many, explore, chuck away, try, retry, until you've really reached the essence of that, which is something I've always been afraid doing in my choreography. I get an idea and I want to stick to that idea and explore that. So moving forward, I would like to explore those concepts within my own choreography to challenge myself as a choreographer. So, how has the choreographic practice of these artists influenced my practice? As discussed, I find I relate myself more to Alston's approach rather than Hofesh's work. Yet for the practical choreography assignment coming up, I really want to see how I can challenge myself in this next process. For the idea that I'm currently exploring, I want to use the fight or flight response, which is where the physiology and psychological response to stress prepares the body to react to danger. I'm still in the research stage at the moment. I haven't worked with my group. I'll be doing that in a month or so. But I have a few ideas which I feel nod towards Hofesch's and Alston's processes. So first of all, I'm going to talk about improvisation. So I'd like to use the words fight and flight and ask the group to improvise around those words first of all, discussing the differences and the qualities of our movements. And then from these explorations come together to create an opening sequence with the dancers as a whole group, a little bit like Richard Alston used in Overdrive. Another improvisation task is a solo, being stuck on the spot and exploring how if you're stuck and contained within a box, and then eventually setting that material, but then bringing the group together so that everyone's really, really close in the space, and using pathways, dynamics, levels, directions, and really having a try and explore and see how close you can get the dancers together. So I'd like to bring elements of Hofesch's work into that, into try again. For music, I'd like to use a piece of music to create a short motif, picking out the highlights, the accents, often seen in Alston's work. And then another idea would be playing with how different pieces of music can support a phrase of movement, or how can it drive it, how can it give it that different sense of energy, like Hofesch uses in his work. So these are just a few ideas of tasks that I'd like to use when I come to work with Swindon Academy for the choreography assignment. I feel that the process at the moment would be similar to Hofesch's, starting with the idea, really trying and exploring, getting initial ideas from them. And also with Richard Alston with the music, or coming up with the music to start with, I think may play a large role within my work. At the moment, I envision the piece as being fast-paced, technical, chaotic, very animalistic, and using the whole space and using patterns. So I hope that by looking at Alston's and Hofesch's choreographic processes, I can take that information, apply it to my own work coming up in the choreography unit, and really use it to challenge myself and not going back to how I usually approach choreography. Thank you very much for listening. Has anyone got any questions? Yes, Sam?
In your upcoming choreographic process, will you try using music first, like Alston did, as part of his influence?
I'm not sure if I will. I'd quite like to have music, quite an array of music with me. So for improvisation tasks, we can play around with those. So it wouldn't be whereas Alston uses, he's got his piece of music and then that's it for the process. I'd quite like to come in with not knowing what piece of music I will eventually use for the finished piece. So I think I'll try and have a variety, use them for different tasks, maybe for improvisation, or maybe create a phrase to that piece of music. But then, I might have a little play and see what piece I prefer or what comes together naturally with that group. Has anyone got anything else? Jade?
So it looked as though both Alston and Hofesch work quite closely with movements being quite precise.
Yeah.
Is that something that you will be looking at? Because obviously you said you're working with a lot of improvisation, but will you be looking to find that specific technicality in the movement as well? So you're taking that on from, say, Alston and...
Yeah, I think I'd like to, especially with the group that I'm going to use. It's something I've worked with them in the past, teaching them a technical class, and I'd like to try and incorporate that into the choreography. So there's really big chunks of group unison that's very, very clean with their technicality, but then it will go into something quite animalistic and chaotic, and then everyone will just explode and then come back together. So I think that's where I'm trying to explore at the moment.
So still be, from looking from what they were doing, their work was very fast.
Yeah.
and like you said, animalistic, and so is that the style that you're going to go for?
I think so. I think the idea of the fight or flight theme, when I've started to research in it, is we may not have it. We have it in us, but we're not so aware of it anymore. But in animals especially, it's really, really there, especially as being hunted. So I quite like it to be quite earthy, quite animalistic, and using that within the movement material as well.
So you know you say about you don't want to go back to the way you were before.
Yeah.
What if it naturally went that way? Are you going to totally cut it off, or are you going to
I think
just work with it if that happens?
I think I'd like to challenge myself further, and actually, when I was researching this, I really was interested with chants as well, and I know that we've just done it this morning as well with our lecturers. And that is something I feel that I can bring into my own practice because I've never used it before. So if I do feel myself going back to my usual ways, going like, oh, I quite like that idea, I'll just go with that, then I feel like, no, challenge myself, come up with something else and use maybe chants or different
But if
types.
it works, will you roll with it, or are you going to just make sure that that doesn't happen?
Ooh. Maybe I would just note down that I am aware that I have gone back to this, but it has worked quite well for this process. But to note for next time, actually, if I find myself going back, why am I going back to my usual ways? But if it's because it's not working, how can I push myself further? Thank you very much, everyone.